Good afternoon, UMass Boston community. Welcome to Facilities Planning and Construction Projects campus-wide update presentation. It's been a while since we presented updates on what's going on. As you know, there is a lot going on. Our last presentation was back in March of 2021. As far as introductions in the agenda for today, we'll be giving updates on campus planning projects, construction projects, and other campus-related projects. The presenters today will be, I'm sorry, by the way, I'm Mike Kearns, Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities. The first presenter will be Dennis Swinford, Director of Campus Planning. Dennis was introduced to the last brown bag as a new employee. You'll see that Facilities has staffed up over the past year and a half with more resources in these areas. Kyle Erickson, the Director of Project Management, will be presenting next. And last but not least, Kathleen Cayley, Vice Chancellor for Admin and Finance, will be presenting at the end. We do have a new key employee that has just joined this week. Tina Perez has joined us as a campus planner. Tina joins us with over 15 years of experience, the bulk of which was in an academic setting with Wentworth Institute of Technology, last couple of years with a construction firm as a project manager. So Tina has both planning and project management experience. We're glad that she's joining us. There were some questions submitted prior to the meeting as we sent out an invite for that. So we will answer those questions during the course of the presentation. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dennis Swinford for the planning section of the presentation. Dennis.
Thank you, Mike. I have two big buckets that I'd like to talk about today, and they're primarily the major responsibilities of the campus planning group, and that is our space moves as we move and use our existing spaces differently on campus. And then as we do that, some updates in terms of the environment and the spaces and architectural improvements in those spaces. So I have those I'd like to talk a little bit about, and then our campus master planning update. So there are a lot of them, but the four big ones that we are working on currently in a very beginning of the design process is some work in the Clark locker room and the Clark locker room, and I call it the knuckle between the gymnasium space and the ice hockey space. Our women's softball diamond project is we're looking at doing an improvement for that space. And then the campus center serveries update. So where we go have lunch and dinner and great places to visit and get good food. That's going to go through an update process, and you'll see all of these changes coming soon. And then we are working with student leadership on working and giving them an update in their co-curricular spaces on the second and third floors of the campus center. But with those set of very important projects, we also have another one coming up, and that is the campus master planning process. This is an illustration of our master plan that we're working on now. We're working off of now. Much of what is in this master plan has been achieved, which is really spectacular for the campus. Things like the ring road and the campus center and ISC and U-Haul. And most importantly, and last but not least, is our new quad in the middle. So a lot of these things have been achieved. So it's time to do a campus master plan update. And as we think about doing a campus master plan update, we are also tying it to the university strategic planning process. So there are two tightly coupled components of strategic planning: the university strategic planning and the campus master planning. Next slide, please, Carl. And then many of you have probably seen this before, the elements of the strategic planning process. All the committees have been formed for that, and the working group for the master planning process has been formed. With these two tightly knit components of strategic master planning process, they also run in parallel. And the next slide is going to illustrate how our campus master planning update process will run in parallel with the campus strategic planning process. And they're kind of small but important arrows in between the two, blue line and the red orange line, are places where we are going to interface with what's happening at the campus in the campus strategic planning process, and when we and how we can interface as we look at doing the campus master planning update. There are 4 big phases in our campus master planning process. A discover and analyze phase, kind of existing conditions. What's the envelope? What's the condition of the envelope that we're planning for? And we begin to understand that. Space utilization is going to be a big part of that phase, along with environmental conditions, and in what condition are our buildings, and how can we put in capital renewal into the master plan in existing buildings. Phase B will be the program. So what do we want to add to the campus or change on the campus to help achieve all those great things that are being discussed in the strategic master planning process? So a master plan program. What do we want to have to go forward? Then the phase C, or the explore phase, is how we take the existing conditions where we are today and the program where we want to be in the future, and bring them together in a really elegant and sophisticated way, and a way in which and also in a way that can be achieved and accomplished. I think that the campus has a great history of accomplishing their master plans. I really do look forward to creating a master plan that is really quite implementable over the future, or throughout the future. And then the last phase is really taking what we have developed in phase C, the explore phase, and begin to define, to begin to refine it a bit and to make a documentation. So that is really where we create the documentation that we will use going into the future to help us guide the campus. Next slide, please. Our master planning update working group here's a list of your colleagues that have been asked to be on the working group. Everyone on the campus is going to have an opportunity to participate in the master planning process. We have open campus forums planned, work sessions planned with anyone that's interested in attending. But I put this group's names up, because if you have questions or want to know about how the master planning update process is going, please reach out to the members of the working group. They'll be available to listen to your ideas, to let you know what progress we've been making, and also to bring those ideas back to the meetings that we're having and the work sessions we're having with them. So there are a lot of ways in which we look forward to everyone participating in the process. Next slide, please.
Very good. Thank you, Dennis. Good afternoon, everyone. Carl Erickson, as Mike Kearns introduced earlier. I'll be giving an update on the construction projects around campus, focusing on 3 areas: the substructure demolition quadrangle development, or SDQD project, as it's commonly referred to, deferred maintenance projects, and other projects underway on campus. The SDQD project is the last key component of the 25-year master plan that Dennis referenced, that was issued in 2009. It addresses long-term problems that originated with the original design and construction of the campus. It also preserves original elements of the campus and extends their useful life, which I'll touch upon in a moment. And it will create the largest component of it, a new vibrant center quad, and it creates the potential for future development sites for academic buildings. With respect to some of the key components of the SDQD project, there's an extensive amount of substructure repairs that were done and being wrapped up underneath the Wheatley McCormick buildings to extend the useful lives of those buildings. It demolishes the science building in the former pool area to create the centralized quad. And a significant component of this project also is addressing new waterproofing and drainage to protect the existing plaza areas, which experience quite a bit of damages from leaks in it. Other elements of the project include there'll be a new stair entrance and Healy elevator that will tie in right off of the quad. The new centralized quad recreational area and pathways through that, which I'll touch upon in a minute, as well as a new 300 space parking lot, which meets the long-term needs of the campus. This parking lot was sized based on long-range planning by Walker Parking. So together with the west garage, the campus center garage, lot D, and this SDQD lot, there'll be sufficient parking to meet the campus needs when Bayside is closed. To give you an overview of what the quad looks like at completion, is the picture on the screen. All of these pathways that take you up from either Beacons Walk or over by the residence hall are all ADA compliant, as well as you'll be able to traverse straight through to the elevator and stairs to Healy. The new quad will also offer a number of new functions and uses in the centralized area. Basketball courts along Beacons Walk, upper and lower lawn areas for recreational activities or gatherings, either for movie nights or functions by campus services. Centralized quad area with rock outcroppings for gathering, several picnic groves and an outlook area for gathering as well, and a small recreational field over by the campus center. At this point, I'm going to have, while I can speak to the completion of this SDQD, there's a video rendering that is available online, and I'm going to have turn it over to Lauren to share that video, and then we'll come back to the presentation. So that link, when this presentation is posted online, you will also be able to jump to that video if you wanted to see it again. There's also a construction site camera that's been tracking the progress and allowing people from the community to peek at it. This just gives you a brief timeline of some of the major milestones or advancement of construction. Almost a year ago, we still had the science and portions of the plaza remaining. That construction continued to advance, and now today that's all gone. All of the materials from the science center are crushed and will be reused to build the quad back up from its to meet the elevations. In terms of construction progress, the plaza, which is the most area that all of us are focused on, has been being completed in phased areas. Paver installation has required some shifting of pedestrians. But throughout this, we've maintained emergency egress paths throughout. We are compliant with code egresses, and we work closely with our environmental and health safety in all of the egress paths. The big push in terms of areas for turnover was the area between the campus center, McCormick, and Wheatley, allowing for the increased population on campus. With respect to emergency egresses and all of the egresses that we had before, we maintain and continue to have, as well as egresses to existing buildings that were not impacted by campus construction. And in the evacuation drill that we did at the start of the fall semester, egress times were the same as those as we've had prior to construction. So this is something that the project team, facilities, and environmental health and safety take seriously, and continue to monitor that and make sure that proper egress is and continues to be maintained for the project. The other major component of construction is the quad. The work is, as you saw earlier in the slide, all of the major quad areas demolished, and there are two efforts now are focused on building these large, what we refer to as structural voids. These are needed as we're bringing the elevation of the project. At Clark, it's at 24. When you get up to the campus center, you're at elevation 49, and all of the materials to bring that up need separation from the existing building face. In this large structural void, the engineers designed that to account for that load from the building up of the plaza. And you'll see when you look at the site camera, you'll see a lot of that starting to progress now along the face of Quinn and moving towards the campus center. Trying to put some of the pictures of the construction to relate them back to that as final condition for the quad. This is some areas that were separated from the existing plaza to the former science and other areas, doing restoration at the face of the buildings. In this area is some completed and opened area of completed pavers for emergency egress. Along the west side of Wheatley, areas that are prepped with waterproofing and drainage mat, and will now be getting pavers placed on those. It's underway. This is one of the structural voids that I mentioned that's builds up the elevation in front of Quinn. This area in here will be where the new gravity sewer line will go, taking the campus off of a force main sewer, which is a big milestone. And then this area is one of the planter curbs being formed, ready for concrete, which is along this area outside of Wheatley in the campus center. With respect to schedule, major milestone activities that we're continuing to track and work towards. By the spring of 2022, those two large void areas will be complete. That also opens up more real estate for the balance of the area that's to receive pavers, Healy elevator, and the stairs to be complete. And then the project targeting to wrap up in the fall of 2022 with plaza pavers and planters complete, the quad landscape area and parking, and then close out into the spring of 2023. The recreational areas, the grassed areas, do need to mature and set We had a similar when we completed the campus center lawn. It does require a grow-in period before it can be used for recreational use, but we would look to the spring of 2023 where that has set and matured into it. The project, with respect to the budget, again, another question that came in the earlier email requests. 78 million of this project is being funded by the state through DCAM. The current total budget is 181.7. That includes the cost of vacating or getting all the programs out of the Science Center so that we could demolish that. That was done through a project referred to as REAB, or the renovation of existing academic buildings. The Board of Trustees at its last meeting in December approved a $26 million increase to the budget, putting it at its maximum amount. Again, another question that came up was with respect to the catwalks. The catwalks are currently not in the current scope of the project. We do believe that pedestrian circulation from the earlier pictures, will be greatly enhanced with all the open quad walkways. And but the catwalks has been a big issue, and it is being folded into the master plan process as part of that overall moving forward. With respect, SDQD tends to get the bulk of the attention. We do have a number of deferred maintenance projects underway and moving forward. Facilities Department has increased the delivery of these projects. We recently completed procurements for architectural and engineering consultant supports through the designer selection board with the state. That's a critical element in terms of securing the funding from the state for DCAM's higher ed deferred maintenance funding. Currently have 5.8 million of approved projects moving forward, an additional 9.4 million remaining to be sought after and in the planning stages. There was also an opportunity last fiscal year where the state had additional funds, reached out through the president's office, and UMass Boston was able to take advantage of that, received an additional 1.35 million, which went towards the campus center garage resurfacing and the Quinn roof replacement project. Areas of projects that we're working on, so they kind of fall into three buckets that I'm presenting them today: operational improvements, roof projects, and exteriors. We have a number of operational projects going. Refurbishment of the Healy air handling units. That project ready to get started for the spring of 2022. The study's been approved. Service and supply loading docks, repairs to that area. Again, the study is wrapped up in design and targeting that one for spring of 2022. A smaller project is replacement of the McCormick hot water tanks. That's design is underway. The current tanks are inefficient, and the demand and the use has changed as McCormick no longer has the large kitchen area that it had previously, so that will get reviewed. Upgrades to lighting controls on the 5th floor of the ISC is underway and wrapping up. And utility submetering and control of our medium voltage. The addition of these utility submeterings will help reduce overall operating costs as we track better and closer tracking of the usage. And then an upgrade again ties into that upgrade of the campus-wide building controls, again to improve operating efficiencies of the mechanical systems for our buildings. A couple of roof projects that have been underway. Phase 1 of McCormick is complete, and in closeout, we divided it into 2 phases, as the area that was done under phase 1 was in much more critical need of repair. And then we'll take on phase 2. Design is underway and look to start that spring of 2022. Quinn roof we completed, starting another smaller portion of the Wheatley roof that's for the extension towards the plaza in the Dean Suite area. We've done a number of temporary repairs, but the roof needs to be replaced, and that is also in design targeting for early next year. A couple of larger other programs, working to develop a multi-year program for protection of our facades. We have an extensive amount of veneers, and working with the consultant to design an ongoing multi-year program for replacement and maintenance on those. A number of looking holistically at our exterior doors and developing a replacement program of that. One item that DCAM likes is when we take a holistic view of issues, do a comprehensive study, and then we can start to parse out smaller construction projects, but we get the larger study approved. The McCormick stairs on the back of McCormick along U Drive South, that project is ready. We just need coordination with the SDQD project. And a project for Harbor Walk repairs would be a phased restoration of the surface from Morrissey Boulevard all the way around to the JFK access. Throughout this, we would maintain access to the Harbor Walk. At times, we would route pedestrians up and around and not allowing that work to get done. It also includes replacement of the pavilion ADA ramp that's been closed for some time and improvements to the pathway lighting along the Harbor Walk. And lastly, a few other capital projects that are underway, some improvements to the fire protection, which will enhance flexibility and feeding of our loop system, giving us greater ability for isolation of the fire protection line to continue with maintenance. 3 flagpoles that are going in at the B and Cooley Rotary. That work is complete. The flagpoles should be raised this week, actually. They finally were delivered. And then the compressors at the campus center dining had failed, and we've replaced those. Those are all new, made improvements interior to the cold storage and ice units, and moved those compressors onto emergency power. In the event of a power loss, those would remain running. That's the construction update. At this point, I'll turn it over to Kathleen, and she will talk about some other campus-related projects.
Hello, everybody. We wanted to also touch on today on 2 of the campus's major multi-year projects that we're doing that are going to be worked on with external parties. So those 2 would be Dorchester Bay City, which is the development of the current Bayside parking lot area, as well as University Crossing at Dorchester Bay, which is with what we would know as the calf pasture pump station. So to start a little bit about Dorchester Bay City, the work on this project is continued with Accordia. Just as for background contracts to review, this project is the development of 2 major parcels. The first being our parking lot that's at Bayside right now, and then the second is the Santander site across the street. Accordia, who is the developer for the project, has rights to develop both of these parcels, and so the Boston Planning and Development Agency had required Accordia to master plan both of these parcels together. So they're doing that in context and calling that Dorchester Bay City. So Accordia has been working through the permitting process with the BPDA over the last several months. As we've mentioned in previous webinars, they've had a number of public meetings and going through the public process, and they've unveiled some of the vision of how they see the development and many of the components that they envision to be part of this overall development. Have been presented examples here. Different parts of the area would be focusing on the waterfront and looking at how it fits into the neighborhood. So there's this material here. Then they've also, as part of their work, put forth your renderings about how some of the development might look like. So this is just an example of one of the things that they put forward to help people think about, well, what would the development look like as it progresses? For in terms of how Dorchester Bay City affects our campus, this project, as a reminder, is primarily a monetary transaction for us. Back in February 2019, the Board of Trustees did approve a 99-year lease agreement with Accordia regarding this property, and the campus would benefit with a minimum of $192.5 million payment up to a maximum of $235 million at the time of permitting, depending on how much square footage ultimately gets permitted. So Accordia has been working on this. The project is subject to the City of Boston Article 80 permitting process, so it's the permitting process that the city uses for large scale development within the city limits. Accordia has been progressing and they are presently their process. They plan to wrap this up by June of 2022. So they're well underway. Certainly things that members of the campus community can do to help understand this project more. There is the scoping determination that had been released. This has been happened since the last time we had a webinar. So that information is publicly available, and the link to that is here in the presentation that'll be made available after the webinar. And then also, all are invited to attend future meetings that are hosted as part of the planning process, or even catch up on past events. There's a link here where you can take a look and see about some of the past meetings and some of the topics that are being discussed regarding this particular project. Regarding University Crossing, or the calf pasture pump station, this project is a little bit closer to campus here. It comprises of the calf pasture pump station building itself, as well as some of the adjoining land. This would be planned to take for, this project would also be planned to be a public-private partnership. So we would not envision university money being used to help develop this. This would be something that would be done in partnership with private development. We have previously had a committee formed to help advise UMBA about campus's priorities and to solicit ideas from the campus community. You may recall that having taken place, over the past, several months. And so that information had been conveyed to UMBA so that they can use it as part of the requirements for what's being sought from developers. So just in terms of the parcels specifically that are developed, there is the calf pasture pump building itself, which is the sort of the second yellow block down here on the bottom, close to the softball field. And then there's also the parcel that moves over towards the EMK parking lot over there, and then also lot D. So those are the parcels that are included in this particular project. There is an RFP out for out on the street right now from the building authority, using Newmark as the lead agent with that. And so they're in the process of soliciting ideas from developers. And as part of that solicitation, we've included there's been included principles from the campus community. This was developed by the committee that I was referring to earlier, about what would be important to the campus community as we think about this project. So certainly, some of the future uses, we want developers to be thinking about, how does this fit in and connect with our academic programs? Ideally, this is going to be academic, research, and learner focused. We want this as being so closely connected to our campus. We want this to improve our campus life here at the university, and engage our neighbors, and advance accessibility and inclusion, and then also be profitable, viable, and sustainable. So all those uses are in the RFP, and we would expect that developers would be responsive to these particular principles. Then also, just in terms of guidance around the form of the development, we want to be able to be connected to the campus space that we have here, that it would involve exemplary environmental sustainability, climate readiness, create a handsome, welcoming space to the campus. Certainly, it's one of the first buildings you see when you come down Mount Vernon Street. So we want this to be, something that's a centerpiece for folks as they arrive here at UMass Boston. We wanted to link it to our open spaces, acknowledging that we're particularly, we are right here on the ocean. We want this to fit in with that. Highlight the architecture of the pumping station. This goes back to a very important time in the city's public health history. We want to make sure that it is true to that, and then also support accessibility and inclusion. So we're looking forward to seeing how developers will what kind of ideas they'll put forward as part of the development process, because that will also help us inform us as we go through the campus master planning update process that Dennis was talking about earlier, about as we see what the developers would propose to build for this particular parcel. That will help inform us as we plan for our capital master plan about what other uses we might need to build into the campus master plan for the overall campus here at UMass Boston. So it's a really exciting time for the university in terms of thinking about how these projects will affect the life of the campus moving forward, and all the academic programs and student opportunities and opportunities for faculty and staff into the future. So I think that sort of gives a little bit of background about these two projects. I think the timing of the part for University Crossing is going to depend on the level of proposals received and the amount of time generally speaking, the process is similar to what with Bayside, where proposals are received, then they sort of go back and fine tune them and provide input so that really you can get down to having some really fine defined proposals that are going to be much more responsive to what the university and what UMBA and the Board of Trustees is ultimately looking for. So I think that sort of wraps up what we have for the other projects that the campus has ongoing. So I want to thank everybody for coming out today. We hope that maybe next semester we could get to be in person and host some a little bit more with all of our colleagues. But for today, I think, the webinar was the way to go. So, this presentation might have created additional questions for anything. We're very interested in hearing from the campus community about any questions or comments that you might have. You can send them in to the master planning process at umb.edu. Certainly, as it relates to the overall campus master plan update, as Dennis mentioned, there's the working group. Please feel free to connect with members on the working group. You'll have that list available, not only in what's come out from the university around strategic planning and the campus master plan update, but also within this presentation. So feel free to reach out to any of those members as well to get interest, concerns on the table. And then also, last but not least, I just also wanted to mention, if you're walking around and you do see any kind of issues related to construction, we also want to hear from you around that. So there is the facilities service response, which is here every single day, who's available to take in those kinds of issues that you may observe and be responsive to getting any kind of things addressed that we may need to. So that's there as well. Don't hesitate to call them. They're here to serve all of us here on campus. So they're available as well. So I hope that you found this informative today, and we look forward to updating the campus as these projects progress later on this academic year. Thank you.